There is a quiet power in choosing to grow, in deciding each day to be just a little better than you were yesterday. It is not a loud revolution. It is not always seen or celebrated, but it is one of the most courageous acts a person can commit to. The journey of personal growth, of bettering oneself, is not one of convenience. It does not come when we feel ready or when the road is smooth. It demands that we rise, even when everything around us tries to pull us down. To focus on making yourself better always is not to say that you are not good enough. It is to say that you recognize the capacity within yourself for more, for wisdom, for grace, for strength, for clarity. And this recognition, this honest awareness, is not born of ego. It comes from humility. It comes from knowing that no matter how much we may have achieved or overcome, there is still room to grow, not just in skill, but in spirit. There are many who believe growth is something that happens when life is easy, when the skies are clear, and the path ahead is well lit. But we know better. We know that growth often emerges in the shadows, in the silence, in the struggle. The truest parts of ourselves are shaped not when we are applauded, but when we are alone with our thoughts, with our failures, with our hopes. That is where the work is done. That is where we plant the seeds for something greater. And this kind of growth, the quiet, constant kind, cannot be faked. You cannot speak your way into being better. You must live it. You must show it in the way you treat others, in the way you hold yourself accountable, in the way you respond to pain, and in the way you move forward despite fear. The world does not need perfection. It needs sincerity. It needs people who are willing to examine themselves and take responsibility not only for what they've done, but for who they are becoming. Every day brings with it a choice to remain as we are, or to step forward, however slowly, into a new version of ourselves. That step might be as small as learning to listen more carefully, to speak more kindly, or to admit when we are wrong. It may be learning patience, or it may be standing firm in the face of injustice. Whatever it looks like, it begins within. It begins with the decision to not remain stagnant, but let us not confuse movement with progress. True self-improvement is not frantic or flashy. It is deliberate, it is disciplined, and yes, at times it is uncomfortable, because it asks us to confront our own weaknesses, to let go of what no longer serves us, and to walk away from old habits that may have once protected us, but now hold us back. That is not easy, that is not painless, but it is necessary. We do not better ourselves by pretending to be strong. We do it by daring to be honest, honest about our fears, honest about our faults, honest about the fact that we still have so much to learn from our past, from those around us, and even from those we once dismissed. The person who is willing to keep learning, no matter how much they already know, is the person who carries wisdom not only in their mind, but in their actions. You see, there is no finish line in the pursuit of becoming better. No day will come when we can say, I have arrived. There is nothing more to do. Life will always bring new challenges, new lessons, and new ways to evolve. And that is a gift. It means that no matter where we are today, we are not bound to it. We are not imprisoned by the past or defined by the mistakes we've made. We are instead called to rise again and again. To focus on making yourself better always is not a selfish act. It is one of the most generous things you can do. Because as you grow, you become more capable of helping others grow. As you heal, you create space for others to heal. As you learn to lead your own life with integrity, You become a light for those still searching for the path. And so I say, do not wait for the world to tell you it is time. Begin now. Begin with what you have, with who you are, and with the quiet conviction that you are capable of more, not because you are lacking, but because you are alive. Keep walking, keep growing, keep becoming. It is easy to speak of progress when the skies are clear, when the road is smooth and every step forward is met with encouragement. But we all know that life does not hand out comfort on demand. It is not in calm waters that we discover the strength of our spirit. It is in the storm. It is in the darkness, in the resistance, in the struggle that we are truly tested. And more than that, it is in those moments that we are offered the greatest invitation to grow, not despite adversity, but because of it. Every person carries within them a deep well of strength, often untapped until life demands it. We do not know how resilient we are until we have been stretched beyond what we thought we could bear. And sometimes the world will try to break you not once, but again and again. It will test your faith, your patience, your dignity. You may be stripped of what you believed defined you, but still there will be something that remains. That quiet voice inside you, that stillness that refuses to be extinguished, that is where your strength lies. Let us be clear, to face adversity is not to fail. Struggle is not a sign of weakness. Pain is not a punishment. In truth, every hardship carries within it a lesson, a shaping force, and often those who have suffered most not in bitterness, but in reflection, carry the deepest wisdom. They speak not from theory, but from survival. They understand what it means to rise with no applause, to keep going when no one is watching, and to rebuild from the ashes of what was lost. And in these times, the temptation is always there to become hardened, to turn our backs on hope, to believe that the world has nothing left to offer us. But that is the moment when the choice becomes most powerful. Do we surrender to the weight of our circumstances, or do we turn inward and find the strength to rise? Not because we are without scars, but because we understand that our scars are not signs of defeat. They are symbols of endurance. You see, strength is not loud, it is not boastful, it does not need to dominate. True strength is quiet. It lives in restraint, in compassion, in persistence. It shows itself in the person who refuses to be broken by cruelty, who chooses to remain kind when it would be easier to become bitter. It is in the one who forgives not because they forget, but because they refuse to carry hatred in their heart. That is strength, that is power, and it is born not in comfort, but in adversity. There will be days when the burden feels too heavy, when progress seems too far off, when the future feels like a distant illusion. And in those moments, you will be asked to believe, not because you see the light, but because you carry it. Because something in you knows that even when everything is stripped away, what truly matters cannot be taken. Your dignity, your will, your truth, these are the things that no chain can bind and no injustice can silence. But we must not walk through pain alone. We are not meant to endure in isolation. There is no shame in needing help, in seeking the hand of another, in leaning on a friend when your strength runs low. For even the strongest among us are, at times, weary, and that, too, is part of the journey. To know that you are not less for asking, that your courage is not diminished by your tears. If anything, it is made more real, and when you do rise, as you surely will, remember what brought you through. It was not just luck or timing. It was the choice to not let hardship define you. It was the decision to keep moving forward, even if only by inches. It was the quiet belief that you are more than what has happened to you, that you can shape what comes next. That you are not just a survivor, you are a builder, a light bringer, a testament to the unbreakable spirit of those who choose to rise. So let adversity come if it must. Let the winds blow and the road twist. We will not crumble. We will not retreat into bitterness or blame. We will stand again and again, because what is within us cannot be undone by what is around us. Rise not in anger, but in strength. Rise not in fear, but in faith. Rise because it is your time. When we speak of becoming better, we must be careful not to think only in terms of ourselves. The journey of self-improvement is not one that exists in isolation. It is not only about climbing a personal mountain or building a name for oneself. No, the deeper purpose is this: to become strong not so we can stand above others, but so we can stand with them. We work on ourselves so that we may lift others higher, so that we may serve not just in words, but in action with clarity, with dignity, and with love. There is a deep misunderstanding in this world that to be great, one must dominate, that to lead, one must be followed blindly. But true leadership begins within. You cannot guide others unless you have first guided yourself. You cannot demand truth from others unless you are willing to be honest about your own shortcomings. And you cannot call others to rise unless you have shown that it is possible to do so with grace. We all come into this world with potential, but potential left unused is a tragedy. When you choose to grow, to sharpen your mind and soften your heart, you are honoring that potential. And more than that, you are preparing yourself to be useful, not only to your family or your friends, but to your people, to your country, and to the generations that will follow. You see, every person you encounter is fighting a battle you cannot see. Some are held back by fear, others by poverty. Some walk with wounds that are invisible but deep. And if you have had the chance to overcome your struggles, to gain wisdom, to find peace, then it is not your right to look down on others. It is your responsibility to reach back and help them climb. What good is knowledge if it is not shared? What good is strength if it is not used to protect the weak? What good is freedom if it does not make others more free? We must understand this. We are connected. No act of growth is ever truly personal, because your better self affects every hand you touch, every word you speak, every life you encounter. A man who has trained his mind to be wise, who has calmed his spirit, who has learned discipline, that man creates peace in his home, and his children grow up with light instead of fear. A woman who has found her voice, who has healed her pain, who has committed to her purpose, that woman becomes a torchbearer, lighting the way for others who once stood in darkness. We improve ourselves so that we do not pass on our wounds. We do the work so that those who come after us inherit strength, not struggle. That is how real legacy is built, not in statues, but in the hearts we touch, in the burdens we help to carry, in the lives we quietly change by becoming better, not louder. It is easy to point at others and say, they must change. It is harder and far more powerful to say, let me become better so I can help them find the way. That is the work of giants. And yet, it is the calling of every human being who chooses to live with purpose. We cannot wait for perfect circumstances. We cannot wait until we have all the answers or until the world finally becomes fair. We begin with what we have where we are. If you know how to listen, then listen to someone who has never been heard. If you know how to read, then teach a child who cannot. If you have walked through fire and survived, then be the voice that says, you will survive this too. There is always something you can give. And in giving, you do not lose, you expand. But make no mistake, giving from an empty well is no kindness. That is why the first work must always be the inner work. Heal yourself, learn yourself, know your values. Train your character, because when you are rooted in yourself, no storm can shake you, and then, and only then, can you be a shelter for others. This is not the loud work. It is not often recognized or rewarded, but it is the most important work you will ever do. And when you do it, when you truly commit to becoming better so that others may rise, then you become part of something far greater than yourself. You become a living answer to someone else's silent prayer. Let us grow so others may grow. So much of the world today shouts. It shouts for attention, for recognition, for validation. And in this noise, many have come to believe that to be powerful is to be loud, that to be seen is the same as being strong. But I tell you now, strength does not always raise its voice. True strength does not need to be announced. The most powerful force in a person's life is often quiet. It is a quiet resolve, a quiet courage, a quiet determination that moves without fanfare, but never loses direction. You do not need to stand on a stage to lead. You do not need applause to have value. The work that matters most is often done in silence in the early mornings when no one is watching, in the quiet decisions to do what is right even when it is difficult, in the patient practice of discipline, honesty, and humility. That is where true change begins, not in the noise, but in the stillness. The world will often try to pull you into its frenzy. It will urge you to rush, to compare, to compete. But understand this, growth does not come from chaos. It comes from clarity, and clarity is found in the quiet. If you want to become better, not just in skill, but in spirit, you must be willing to step away from the noise and listen to yourself. Listen not to your fears, not to your ego, but to your truth. What is it that truly matters to you? What are you building? Who are you becoming? These are questions that cannot be answered in the crowd. They can only be answered in stillness. So do not fear being alone with your thoughts. Do not fear the silence. That silence is where your strength begins. It is in the quiet spaces of life that we plant the seeds of transformation, and like all seeds, their work happens underground, in the dark, long before anything can be seen on the surface. We live in a time where speed is worshipped, but fast is not always wise. Fast decisions can be shallow. Fast reactions can be reckless. True growth takes time. It takes consistency. It takes the willingness to do the hard, slow work of building your character, shaping your habits, and learning from your failures. This is the work that no one else sees, but it is the work that defines you. You must learn to be content in the process, even when the results are not yet visible. Because real change often happens invisibly. One day you realize you are no longer angry at the things that once broke you. One day you respond with grace where you once reacted with fire. One day you stand firm where you used to crumble. These are quiet victories, but they are real, and they are powerful. Never confuse noise with progress. Some shout because they are unsure. Some run because they do not know where they're going. But the one who walks steadily, even slowly, in the right direction will always arrive. Trust your quiet work. Trust your daily commitment to be better, even when no one else notices, because one day they will. And when they do, it will not be because you demanded attention, but because your life began to reflect something undeniable: discipline, peace, strength. There is a certain dignity in being the kind of person who does not need to shout to be heard, the kind of person whose presence brings calm, not chaos, the kind of person who keeps their word, even when it's inconvenient. That kind of person changes families. That kind of person changes communities. That kind of person becomes a quiet force for good. This does not mean we must never speak. There are times to raise our voices for justice, for truth, for the voiceless. But even then, our power does not come from volume. It comes from conviction, and conviction is born from stillness, from reflection, from the quiet work of knowing who you are and what you stand for. You do not need to rush. You do not need to impress. You only need to grow with intention, with patience, and with faith. Every small act of self-discipline, every quiet moment of courage, every decision to choose integrity over convenience, these are the stones that build a life of meaning. And when your life becomes rooted in that kind of quiet strength, there is nothing the world can throw at you that will shake you. You may bend, but you will not break. You may struggle, but you will not lose your way, because your strength was never in how loud you were, but in how deeply you stood for what is right. So walk your path quietly, but walk it boldly. Let the world be loud, you be steady. Let others chase attention, you chase truth. For in the end, it is not the noise that remains, it is the work, it is the legacy, it is the quiet power of a life well lived.